Welcome everybody to another market day. It is 7:30, 2020, and I am your designated inquirer. My name is Axel, and today we're going to be going over the four stocks that reported today, including Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Google. They all reported incredibly well. They all, to a certain extent, uh, Amazon in particular, which we can show here, did twice as well as it did the previous quarter, is only up about 50% from the previous quarter, but it did not make a new all-time high, at least not yet. What is we can still see that happen. So we don't know exactly how it's going to act tomorrow, or if people are just kind of quote unquote selling the news, and depending on what they're receiving on the end of Bezos being able to speak to the future of the behavior of the consumer, etc., whatnot, it can dictate as to whether or not this can go further higher into the future, which we don't know yet. Which is kind of funny because these four stocks and these four companies are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, in a manner of speaking, because they have to kind of downplay their success the day after that they went to Congress and they were saying, we're not that powerful. We don't wield that much power. We're not that big. Um, we still have competition. Our but it doesn't really look that way. Like from Jim Cramer himself was basically spelling out the same argument. Like, but his argument was a little bit insidious in that, yes, these companies have been able to capitalize on what effectively was an acceleration of a trend in terms of consumer behavior, in terms of just societal behavior in general. Because um, if you listen to CNBC for any given amount of time, like over a week or so, what you'll hear is that a rapid digitization of the marketplace is effectively what happened over the past 3 months. But the amount of progress that was seen was the progress that was expected over a term of 5 years. Now, 5 years is a good breadth of time, like anthropologically speaking, where behaviors are set in stone. It takes a long time for it to get there, like to be able to condition people to be able to react to a new way of doing things. Like, there's a lot of things that can happen from an anthropological, like, point of view that would solidify and get people to act a certain way. Now, even though people have effectively moved in a direction to be able to digitize our marketplace, and that enough progress has somewhat been seen, we don't know yet how sticky these behaviors are to the average consumer. Will they go back and want to go to the mall, be able to shop in person, to be able to like do all these things? Is the twice as much benefit that Amazon saw this quarter, will it be able to project that into the future and confidently and be able to say that yes, the consumer is going to keep doing these things into the foreseeable future at this particular rate and even further more? That's the thing that we don't know yet, and that's the thing that investors are kind of waiting for. So that could answer why it did not outright make a new 52-week high today, and also why the market in general, as we can see here, didn't also do the same. QQQ's up here. Basically, it went above today and yesterday, but it did not go above this level right here. It basically was able to be rejected at these levels. We'll see though how it opens up tomorrow morning and tomorrow as to what direction it goes, to see if it'll be able to top this level right here, 269.79, which is gonna be able to tell us like whether or not we're still in a bull market or if we've effectively topped out. Because to be able to do a triple top and not break is more impressive still than to be able to double top and not break. So there's a lot of stuff going on here that we have yet to like fully grapple with. Now, something that I want to speak to in terms of how these companies have been doing business is yesterday, where we saw some of the like partially new lows, etc., whatnot, was during the congressional hearings. Now, during the congressional hearings, it was an investigation that was conducted by Congress to see whether or not these four companies in particular, which are the biggest portions of like the NASDAQ, the S&P, the Dow, depending on which one you're looking at, they're all components of these, and for a large part they have been granted the reason as to why they've gone up so quickly since the March lows. So they wield an incredible amount of influence over the market, regardless of their actual power that they wield over the market. Like maybe not speaking about their market capitalization, but talking about like the influence that they wield is much larger than the amount of total business that they conduct versus GDP in general, etc. It would be very hard for any one particular company to do any percent of the total GDP of the entire country. So now, so what was being put in front of these companies yesterday was testimony and complaints levied by people that were working with these companies initially and were supposed to be beneficiaries of their existence, basically. Like, it was people that sold to them, it was people that were in partnership with them, it was people that were supposed to hold their trust to a certain extent. And even if you're in competition with somebody, you're supposed to be able to trust other companies to not necessarily deal in bad faith, right? They're supposed to be able to wield, even if they're more powerful than you, they're supposed to be able to deal in good faith and not act in a way that they're unduly wielding their power and influence to corner the market, to destroy you as a business, and to gain leverage that otherwise other people would not have. And not necessarily because it's not something that they outright control, but it's almost to a certain extent illegal activity. Like they're unduly, this is what kind of illegal is about it, is that they're unduly wielding power to their advantage over competition. They're stifling competition. And that's what these reports and this investigation was bringing forth, right? So, and the part that you know that was disconcerting about the testimony that was brought in front of them was their reaction to that testimony. Time and time again, these CEOs were basically saying that they did not agree with the characterization that those complaints and that those examples were giving on their company. It's like, I'm sorry, you don't have any control over the characterization of these actions and or behaviors have on the people that complained. Like, you don't get to choose how they take it or how we're supposed to see it. Like, the end effect of those actions gave results. Instagram ended up selling to Facebook. Diapers.com ended up folding and not being able to compete with Amazon. There was a bunch of things that these companies did outright to be able to absorb, copy, plagiarize, basically, and wield undue influence to destroy their competition, and then thereafter not even benefit the consumer, because in the case of Amazon, ended up raising prices on diapers that new moms and stuff need anyway, to be able to, like, the consumer had one less choice of where to go to be able to buy. And so they knew this, and so they raised their prices to reflect that, to be able to capitalize on this newfound power that they wielded. Like, regardless of how Amazon wanted that to be conveyed, their actions, the results of their actions were the results of their actions. Like, there's no other way to be able to flip the facts of the case. Like, like, and it's the same thread that is following many other things that are happening in society today. Um, whether or not we're talking about Black Lives Matter, whether or not we're talking about the Me Too movement, whether or not we're talking about basically these four companies bullying other entities and other individuals and or companies, whether or not is the government itself like wielding its power in an undue way to harm other people, whether or not it's an investment, whether or not it's somebody's rights, whether or not it's the peace of mind and or pursuit of happiness of others. Like, they're not listening to the complaints that we're levying against these people that hold power over all of us, right? Whether or not we're a person of color, whether or not we're a woman, whether or not we're a smaller company, whether or not we're a citizen, these entities are wielding power and doing harm against us, and they're not even taking the time to listen to us. That's why we have people rioting in the street. That's why we have people basically leveling these complaints to their congressmen and women and telling them, hey, they're acting in a way that's unfair. They're impeding my right to my pursuit of happiness, which should be unalienable. It's one of the words that I struggle with the most, but I feel like it's one of the most important that people tend to forget all the time. That it doesn't necessarily mean whether or not you are an alien, whether or not you are an immigrant in this country. It doesn't necessarily mean that whether or not you're not a white person that happens to wield power doesn't mean that you automatically don't get these rights. And it should mean that whether or not you're a felon, whether or not it shouldn't matter who you are or what your life situation is, your rights should be your rights. And that so long as that they don't impede on the rights of others, you should be able to practice them. Your agency should not be impeded. And I feel like that's something that people tend to forget also, is that while we may not all be the same, our agency, our will to do what we want should not be any less than anybody else. We should be able to try and do anything or make anything that we want. If somebody wants to try and compete in a physical activity, maybe they're not going to be the same as anybody else, like as the next person who may be better or maybe worse, but that's their freedom to try. They should have the agency to try. It has never been about actually being equal. It should be about equal agency. Letting people have the opportunity, equal opportunity to try and make it in this world as same as anybody else. And at every point in time, it has been the aggressor or the person doing harm not necessarily listening to the complaints of those that are being aggrieved. That regardless of the intent of the that is now in the position of aggressor, regardless of the aggressor's intent, their actions and behavior had consequence. Regardless of the intent of Amazon, Google, Apple, and I'm missing one, Facebook, regardless of their intent, their actions and behavior had consequences. And the consequences were of how the people felt about how these entities were doing business with them, and the resultant actions thereof, including going out of business and or being absorbed completely, being put in a place where they felt that they had no choice but to sell to these entities. And I think that gives Congress more than enough justification to come in and basically do what they see fit, including breaking up these companies because they are unduly wielding power in a way that is causing harm to not only their competition but to the consumer as well. Like, it's to further regulate. Whether or not it can be proven in a court of law or whatnot, like it feels too obvious right now to not to be able to do anything about it. The same way that it feels too obvious to not to be able to do anything about police brutality, to not to be able to do anything about the social inequalities between men and women, to not to be able to do anything about what Donald Trump is doing to this country and how he's treating immigrants and how he's like, regardless of of what side of the spectrum of the political spectrum you're on, like, to me these things feel too obvious. And maybe we don't agree, but that is my perspective, and this is how I see it. This is how a lot of people see it, and I, for one, am listening to the aggrieved, and I am sympathizing with them, and I believe that they have standing. I believe that their complaints and their grievances have standing in our society, to be able to tell us that they are being aggrieved against, and that they seek to be made whole again, that they seek to be able to practice greater agency than what these oppressors are letting them exercise, in whichever case. It is the common thread that is running through all of these kinds of arguments, whether or not you're looking for social justice or economic justice. It is that there's an amalgamation, a gathering of injustices that have been happening for far too long, and that have been not talked about efficiently enough to the point where we can listen appropriately and to be able to take action to remedy the grievances. I believe that they have standing, and I believe that we should be listening to them, and I feel that we need to be finding a way to be able to correct these situations. Yeah, that's my point of view. That's where I stand, and that's very clear to me. Apart from that, if we're talking about the economics of it all, it doesn't erase that today we basically reported 32% decline in economic activity, that it was a 9% dip in terms of GDP, and that if this isn't corrected, that a good portion of that 9% is going to stick with us to the end of the year. And considering that we're still losing jobs right now, that this is now the second week in a row that we're still losing jobs at an incrementing manner, it's not looking great. And the market, these four companies are welcome to try and put the whole economy on their back, but I don't think they're strong enough to do it. There's still a lot of people here that if Congress doesn't do anything by tomorrow, come October, when we've already seen, it's supposed to be that when PPP runs out and the clauses in there basically stipulate that in October that they're free to do with their employees whatever they want. They had to keep people employed till October. That date is rapidly coming, and there's already companies that are deciding that they cannot stay in business unless they fire people, even with taking PPP money. So that's the state of play at the moment. Those are the things that I've been seeing, and yeah, this has been your market day. If you guys have any questions, if you guys disagree with me, if you guys have any comments, please feel free to comment, like, subscribe, all those things. Find me at Designated Inquirer on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. Yeah, until next time, you guys take care. You guys stay safe, please. I care about you guys, my friends, my family, my loved ones, and you as a human being. Stay safe out there. There's there are monsters in the darkness, and it is upon us. stay vigilant, stay safe, keep your wits about you. Don't just let it be fear that controls you. Keep your wits about you. We need you now more than ever to be present, be here, be cognizant of the things around you. Yeah. All right. Take care.